You always have that?
I've had it for a while.
What's
like
that?
Apple
An
Watch.
Apple Watch? When did you get an Apple Watch?
September last year. I didn't wear it out there because it kills the phone real fast.
Oh, that.
Oh,
Just
yeah,
having that connection.
It sucks a
battery
lot of
drainer.
juice, and then when you're in crappy service, it's worse.
Yeah, I did for the Garmin. I didn't want all that notification stuff on my wrist. I just want something
I would love
help
to have
track my
gotten one.
runs.
Yeah.
I got one of those for my birthday, and I returned it and exchanged it for one of these.
I'm ultra minimal notification.
2 hairs past a freckle.
There's another one.
Half past the cat's ass.
Picking poop fly out of chili soup.
What?
See, I just can't do it.
Poop flies in a chili soup.
He is ass deep in alligators right now.
Okay, your goal tonight is to use as many bass backwards
And try not to screw him
little
up.
allegories as
Bass
you can.
backwards.
Yeah.
That's my
Middle name.
That's my other middle name. I have a lot of them. Depends on how mad you are at me, what you want to call me.
This thing is hot.
It is very hot. You look good, Derek.
And
You
that's
look
why I
real
shed a
good.
layer.
That thing does hold in the heat.
Holy
It's not
banana.
normal. Something's wrong with that thing. There's no electric heater in there. It just is
It's
hot.
very dense.
You can unbutton a couple if you want and get a brown chicken and brown cow
Should
in
just
here.
unbutton the middle.
just get some air in the middle. All right. Well, yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
This is the OKest Hunter podcast. Never pass on shooter bucks, if that's just meat in the freezer. It's your tag, you hunt how you want. This is OKest Hunter.
How are those jalapenos doing from Quick Trip?
This finally killed the taste.
Mine's not barking back so bad.
Clears the
hot.
sinuses up real good. Does that mean they're using really fresh jalapenos at the Quickery?
Means they're spicy jalapeno.
Yeah.
They should sell them with like a discount on Tums. Just put them right next to it,
Yeah.
right next to the hot food
It's the
area. Here's
twofer
some
deal.
Tums, yeah, or
Here's
like the
some
Pepsi
Tums.
Complete or something. The
Fair.
Pepsi Complete's where it's at, I think.
I'm
You
not
take
trying
one
that.
and it's done. You're good to go for like 24 hours.
I can never tell if you're a spokesperson for them or if you're just
Then you're
really
just-
honest.
Otherwise, you're just chewing chalk for hours on end.
I love the chalk.
This sounds like middle-aged white guy. Got white guy problems. Like, seriously.
Hello.
This is
Right?
on par.
That's
Right.
exactly
Did you
what
hear that?
we are. Who we say we are.
I mean,
That's why Nosler decided to partner with us as our premier partner. Demo. We're right in the core demographic. They aim to please, and they hit their target. They got us real good, and they got all you guys too. Hopefully, use code OHP and save 20% off of their ammunition.
Ridiculous.
Do you know how much that is? That's a lot.
it's a deal.
Ammunition is not cheap. It's
No.
actually getting more expensive right now because of some things happening. So just know that we have that for you guys because we care about our listeners so deeply that you get that nice discount code. That's a fat code right there. OHP doesn't look like much, but it's bulky. It carries some weight. You can use that code across all of our partners, Latitude, Rack Hub, and Gerber Gear. I got the Gerber Gear on the table here.
Oh, we used the multi-tool with the smallmouth last weekend.
Did you really?
Oh, yeah.
Because you just have it with you now. That's just
Yeah.
like that's your thing. You keep it on your side pocket, like you on your belt loop with the little
I've got a
Velcro.
holster.
Yeah.
Oh, let me get that fish.
Quick draw McGraw over here. I can't talk. Yeah, you got to push the button on the side and it comes out. It takes a
Okay.
second to figure out, but
And
once you
slide
get
it
it,
forward.
you appreciate it. Yeah,
Check that sucker
There
out.
it
I'll
is.
look at that.
that a girl.
More than meets the eye.
I still don't know what this one does. So when you were doing, there's like a lock on the. I have
Yeah,
no
because there's like
idea
a
what that
ruler.
does.
I think it's just for show.
It's just, it's not for show.
Don't cut yourself, for the love of God. We don't need any
Is
more
that
blood
to
in the
unlock
podcast.
Yeah,
these
it's to
guys?
unlock
Hold
it.
on. Oh, look at that.
See,
What's unlocking? What are you talking about?
what are you talking about, Willis?
Is it? It's
Right
not
there.
even locked.
Yeah, it's locked. You're not.
Oh, that's the unlock.
Lock
button?
it in. Okay, lock in.
Lock it up.
Lock in.
My first
You
station.
lock it up.
What else do we
You
have?
lock it up.
A bunch of knives here. I got them all stacked up. Anyway, yeah, good stuff. Check out our Instagram if you want to see the funniest photo you've ever seen in your life.
Eric's dream came to fruition through the help of our talent, Greg.
I was pretty excited about it.
Just a hand model.
You were reaching into that Quick Trip fanny pack. See you next time, Greg. See you next time.
See you next time.
We do have a topic today, one that is very near and dear to our hearts,
Mm-hmm.
conservation. And it's, I don't know, it's like a pretty vague topic, but I think
It
we're
is
gonna-
because there's multiple levels to
correct. There's layers,
Right.
like an onion,
it. Yeah, layers.
like parfait.
Si, senor.
You ever had anyone that does like parfait? I haven't.
We have a guest too, don't we?
Yeah, we do. I'm gonna bring the guest on so you guys don't have to hear us rambling on. But hey, Mark, Hey, we got Mark Kenyon on the line. Mark, what's going on?
Hey guys, I'm just sitting here shaking my head and
Just
laughing
You
at-
had to be shaking your head the entire
at,
time.
at
What-
the most Wisconsin set of banter I've ever heard in my life.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
We even got it. We don't have brandy, but you know.
you
we
should
did.
have seen these Wisconsin boys carrying a tree stand through the quick trip parking lot and slapping it on the tree
Quickly,
to get this
very quickly. We
was
felt
a very quick trip.
We did look a little suspect.
Bringing-
you know,
bringing
I mean,
egg rolls and a
little
rib
sus.
sandwich.
rib
and some jalapeno
sandwiches, I
poppers.
mean,
Amazing.
yeah, it was a sight to behold.
So
Oh,
welcome, Mark.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here. It's great to be with some fellow Upper Great Lakes brethren, and I feel like I'm not the weirdest one on the podcast at the moment, which is
Not
nice.
at all.
there we go. Yeah.
Not at all.
I have a saying, sorry, I'm awkward. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah. good.
Sorry.
Sorry about that. How are you doing, Mark? How is everything in your world?
Man, I'm good. Been home for a decent bit here. The winter is a nice break from travel for me, so been able to get working on some office projects, some good stuff I'm excited about, and catch up on sleep and get ready for the next round of travels and adventures and projects we're working on over at Meat Eater. So it's a nice little breather before the next storm comes this summer and fall. So all good.
Yeah, good to hear. Breather. That's nice to have that little bit of reset to gear up to, because when it gets busy quick. Like antlers are falling, it's about to just be hunting season tomorrow, basically.
Yeah.
It's like,
Basically.
you're always
It all goes really fast.
Yeah, sure does. Well, I appreciate you taking time to be our guest tonight. I'm mostly enthused to have you on to help us navigate this conversation around conservation. The book you wrote, the Wild Country, when was that? 4 years ago?
Came out in 2019. End of 2019 it came out.
5 years ago. Okay. Time flies.
Yeah.
And the quotes you've been sharing to Wired to Hunt as of late, I've noticed a lot of them are coming out of your book, which is really fascinating to me because they're timeless, I think. And conservation is timeless and not something that should blow like the wind. And certain policies can have an impact on things like conservation. And I'm saying conservation, I'm kind of throwing it around, but maybe I'm talking about access or the land that we hunt or things of that nature. And you've recently started kind of sharing this narrative in such an eloquent way that I'm like, I struggle to figure out how to find that line that walks so tightly between two political spectrums without people swan diving into the comments to tell me I'm a woke, whatever, or
Yeah.
conversely telling people that I'm a animal murdering piece of poop.
Yeah.
I'm not either of those things at all. And you can hold multiple opinions and thoughts about things, and both can be true at the same time, or several can be. And how you've kind of started to develop this muscle around a voice in the middle that I think isn't really being heard because the extremes are drowning out anybody that has something worth saying. And I'm sure there's comments where it's a heated topic, so it is hard to navigate. And anyone that's commenting with some sort of heat is passionate, and that's a good thing. People also care. They just see the world through their own point of view. So maybe walk us through a little bit about kind of how you arrived at this. Is it just because the book is there and you're like, man, this is still relevant? I'm looking at these quotes and this could have been written yesterday,
Yeah. So lots to unpack there. And I would start with maybe a major like foundational thesis of my worldview when it comes to this stuff, which is that nature and our public lands and wildlife, this inherently should be nonpartisan, right? There are Republicans and Democrats both who benefit from public lands, who benefit from well conserved and managed natural resources and wildlife populations. There are people within our hunting and fishing community that are on the right. There are folks on the left. There's a whole bunch of folks in the middle. And we largely care about and have had our lives benefited by the same things. Just unfortunately, the nature of our modern day society is that we feel pushed into one of two camps, and whichever camp you're in, it feels like it's like this existential crisis all the time, and the other side is evil somehow, and you have to defend everything that your party believes in, and you have to claim everything the other party believes in is evil. And it seems like there's very little room or oxygen in between those 2 points. Now, I think the reality of the situation is that's not actually what is happening, but the media makes it feel like that. Social media makes it feel like that, because I think the loudest voices on either side are the ones who attack in social media comments a lot of the time. So it can all feel kind of bizarre and disorienting if you are someone like me who, I would consider myself a political independent. I'm kind of right in the middle. I see some good and bad on both sides. I don't feel obligated to claim allegiance to either one, because neither one is particularly great at representing everything I care about. So I'm going to be picking and choosing and supporting and saying no, not so much on that as needed. I am a proud gun-owning rural American who loves to hunt. I also care a whole heck of a lot about the environment and our public lands and natural resources. So sometimes that puts you in a weird spot in our current partisan world, where some of those things have been pushed to one side or the other. So that is where I stand. That's kind of my general thought. And where we are right now, like in this moment in February 2025, is that there are a set of kind of converging waves of energy that point to some concerning trends when it comes to our public lands and how some of the natural resources, the environment, and wildlife are managed related to that. And it's similar to some things that happened from 2016 to 2020 when I was writing that first book. And during that time period, that's when I kind of had my awakening to the fact that I didn't really understand how we got these incredible places and wildlife resources and all these opportunities we had. I was out there all the time. I was, for a number of years, living out of a camper for 2 to 4 months a year, out there from campground to campground in Montana and Wyoming and Idaho, hunting, fishing, hiking, camping, doing all that kind of stuff as much as I possibly could, and absolutely loved these things. They were what my life revolved around. My wife and myself and my wife. And I was starting to hear back in like 2014, 2015, and then 2016 about how there were these elements. There are some people across different parts of the country and different political folks who didn't like our public lands, who thought we shouldn't have them, or thought that we'd be better served by selling them, or simply milking every last dollar that we could get out of them, or transferring them to states so that they could have, full run it, whatever they wanted to do with them. And that all of a sudden kind of pulled the blinders off my eyes and made me realize, oh, wow, these places aren't guaranteed. These opportunities to go on an elk hunt someday, or to have great public land hunting in northern Michigan, or whatever it might be, that might not be there in 10 years if this stuff goes through. That might not be available for my future son if this stuff actually happens. And oh, by the way, how did we get here to this point where there are people who, have very, very different views than I do about these things? That led to me going on this kind of deep dive over several years to understand the history of our public lands and kind of the entire conservation and environmental movement in America. That's what led to that book, That Wild Country, which explored the past, present, and future of America's public lands. So that is how I developed this foundation of knowledge. Now, fast forward, it's been 8+ years since the beginning, probably 10 years since that journey began. And what we have again is some of those elements who are not big fans of our public lands as they stand, who are simply prioritizing something different than I would prioritize and that a lot of other hunters and anglers would prioritize. That being profit, revenue, development, maximum resource extraction. Those elements are, I would say, resurgent at the moment. These folks have more influence and leverage than they've had. And some of these ideas that were very popular in 2014, 15, 16, 17 have all of a sudden regained steam. These ideas being, like I mentioned earlier, either getting rid of our public lands altogether, or transferring them to states, or simply pushing through every single possible resource extraction we possibly can to just squeeze every ounce of juice out of them for cash. So that has been kind of rising over the last year to 6 months. For example, the state of Utah last year filed a lawsuit, sent a case to the Supreme Court, claiming that the federal government owed them 18.5 million acres of federal public lands, that these lands were not constitutionally held by the United States federal government, and they should instead be given to Utah. 20 plus other state attorney generals, so state governments across the country, signed on in support of that. States like Iowa, states like I think maybe both Dakotas, a number of other states that a whole lot of kind of Midwestern hunters and anglers live in, essentially signed off and said, yeah, we agree. So that happened. Luckily, the Supreme Court judged that to not be something they would be taking, and that case has disappeared for the moment. Just recently, a week or two ago, the state of Wyoming, their state senate passed a resolution demanding the federal government hand over every single acre of federal public lands in Wyoming, which is something like, I think it might have been 50 million acres or something, other than Yellowstone National Park.
Demanding handing over public land in Wyoming.
Yes. And that passed. That resolution passed. Now, thankfully, a state senate, the state government actually doesn't have the power to take ownership of the federal public lands. So it was essentially virtue signaling by the Senate there, the state Senate. But nonetheless, I do think it sends a clear signal that there are many people that have some degree of influence that are continuing to push this ideology that is anti-public lands, anti-hunter and angler, access and opportunity for the American people who care about wildlife and wild places. So, and I apologize, guys, this is a long windup.
No, this is
not
great.
at all.
You can
This
keep
is what
going.
we want.
Like, yeah.
This is great.
This is information that people need to hear about, and if they're not paying attention to what's going on with this, because there's so many other distractions right now coming from the powers that be, that they're not going to catch any of these details. So it's important.
Yeah. So you wound me up, and I'm just going to keep on going. So those are a couple examples of what's going on. Then we're going to move to some of the priorities of the current administration and Congress there. And like I said, I don't have a dog in this fight when it comes to, Republicans versus Democrats, whatever. I don't care who you are. I'm simply going to call a spade when I see something that's not good for hunters and anglers and public lands. And there's been a number of things proposed by the current administration that I would view as not good for folks like us who care about these things. There's plenty of other things they're doing that I'm all about. But on this specific set of issues, I've got red flags on. For example, one of the executive orders that the president signed coming in was to review every single national monument within the United States ever created and assess for retracting or changing the boundaries or removal altogether. Now, last time around, he did this for several of the national monuments, but just the most recent set of monuments created. And of two of those, reduced the size of one by 85% and another one by 50%. So if you were to look at past precedent and say that last time around this happened, he slashed the size of an important piece of national public lands by 85%. And he was only looking at a sub-segment of, 6 or something like that. And now all of a sudden we're going to look at 100 of them with the same possible ramifications. That raises a possible red flag. Another issue we could look at could be, for example, the boundary waters, very near to you guys.
Mm-hmm.
There has been a proposed foreign-owned mine right on the boundary of the boundary waters, at the headwaters, essentially. And this mine has, historically, this type of mine has time and time again proven to be dangerously, what's the word I'm looking for here? Frequently has led to pollution issues, basically. It's not something that has ever been done without some degree of significant pollution when near water sources.
And the whole point of the boundary waters being what they are is it's like literally the most pristine nature you can set foot on in this continent.
It's a wilderness area.
You can drink the water out of the lake, which I have.
Yeah.
Good.
So yeah, incredible water-based ecosystem. And this type of mine is particularly dangerous if the tailings and chemicals that could leach out of this area were to infiltrate a water system. The mine is placed right on the side of the boundary waters in which the water would be sucked into the wilderness and could possibly spread throughout. So it's a case of wrong mine, wrong place. I think hunters and anglers largely are certainly all for sustainable, smart, well-managed resource extraction and management, right? We need, rare earth minerals. We need oil. We need timber. We need resources. I understand that hunters and anglers understand that, but I think a key thing is to do it carefully in the right places with moderation and the proper precautions to make sure that we're not needlessly damaging our shared public resources here. And so that's a situation where this mine was proposed a number of years ago. And then for years, something like 8 years, I've personally been involved with it. The hunting and angling community have been fighting back and saying, hey, this is not a good place for this kind of thing. This is the most visited wilderness area in the lower 48 states. It's a priceless, prized landscape, as you just said, for hunters and anglers and canoers and campers.
Moose shed, angler hunters.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. And so we're really fortunate that finally in 2023, I think it was, a mineral withdrawal was placed there that said, nope, we are not going to permit any of this kind of mine happening within this watershed that could risk polluting the boundary waters. So big win in 2023. Well, now this new executive order coming out of the new administration says, hey, we actually want to re-examine every single mineral withdrawal that has been put in place in recent years and look to remove those and fast track resource extraction. So what we just have here is not, at least the way I view it, I don't think there's anyone who's like, trying to mastermind some takeover of our public lands or destroying our public lands in this kind of case. I think what we have is simply different sets of priorities. And what we have is a set of folks at the levers of power who highly prioritize development and business, right? And that's good for a whole lot of things. I would say as a hunter and angler, in the specific case of how we manage our public lands, I'd rather be kind of in the middle. And so I think that kind of stuff raises some red flags for me. When I don't see like a middle approach, I see hey, we're going to go pedal to the metal, grab everything we can, drill around the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, punch a 200-mile road through the Arctic or gates of the Arctic National Park and open up mines in the middle of the Brooks Range, put the mine next to boundary waters, remove protections from the Tongass National Forest and allow free-for-all logging again. There's a whole bunch of things like that are being proposed that are not particularly moderate, are not particularly in the middle when it comes to how we manage and care for these places. They're a little bit pushed the other way. And so all of that has led me to where I am now, where the same things I was seeing, 8 years ago or 10 years ago, and I was writing about, we're seeing that same kind of energy and direction again. And what I learned last time around was that, it is not unpatriotic to raise your voice and say to the folks you voted for, hey, love you on a whole lot of things, but here you're missing the mark. If hunters and anglers don't do that, our interests, we won't be at the table. If we don't raise our voices, if we don't engage, if we don't point at the problems when we see them, folks with different priorities will. And so my whole point in the last month or so, as I've been seeing this, and it hasn't been just the last month, it's been longer than that, but as I've been seeing this rising tide, has simply been to try to bring this back to the forefront of everyone's minds again, that, hey, this stuff's back as it was in 2016, 17, 18, 19, when I think the public land movement really gained a lot of steam. You saw everybody wearing the public landowner t-shirts. You had the keep it public hashtags and all that kind of stuff. And really folks rallied around it and we stopped a lot of bad stuff. Well, it appears that some of the people that want that kind of thing to happen, they're back and there's some energy there. So once again, hunters and anglers and anybody who cares about wild public places and conservation in general, it's just time to re-engage. This isn't like partisan. This is nonpartisan. This is, hey, if you like to hunt, fish, have a wild place to camp, have, opportunities for your kids someday to see some wild, clean, healthy, well-managed places, we just have to be a part of the process and not sitting on the sidelines. And I think that's a very long, rambling way of explaining how we got to here.
Not
Well-
at all.
Well, I think you can't, if Pandora is out of the box, you can't put it back in. If these lands get taken away, there's no going back, which is why they're so heavily protected. That's why these wild places were put into place several years ago. When our country was kind of like booming. It's like, whoa, hold on. There's a lot of industry happening. We got to actually protect these things, or it's all going to just vanish. And one of the quotes in your book, I don't know if it's a quote from you or a quote from like one of the folks being referenced, but it was, we simply need that wild country available to us, even if we never do more than drive to its edge and look in. And you are absolutely right. I mean, we just talked about you resetting as a human being by going and walking miles for piles and just having the ability to go put foot on public ground to go look for sheds, do whatever, not even hunting necessarily in this case. I mean, you're
Well,
shed
yeah,
hunting, but
we talked last week about I'm so excited to bring the kids to the Boundary Waters
Yep.
this summer, and it's a place I know you've enjoyed, Mark. I think you've done a whitetail hunt up there. You've been there, but
Yep.
that to anyone who's been there, that's such a
It's
scary
magic.
prospect. And I just had
Yeah.
two things. One thing is I just wanted to say thank you. Because those posts you've been making, Mark, have brought it back to the forefront of my mind. And being an outdoorsman and someone who talks about this every week, it wasn't at the forefront of my mind the last month. There's so much going on with the extreme politics on both sides that you're fighting a battle on this end, you're fighting a battle, and that's all you hear. That middle ground, like you mentioned, something that's just we take for granted now because there's so much extreme things going on. I wasn't thinking about that at all until I saw you post a couple quotes about, whatever side you're on. Like, this is something that we need as Americans to set a precedent and keep in our minds. So I just want to say thank you for bringing that back to the forefront.
You're
And then
welcome.
I did have a question for you. And you kind of mentioned already that, like, obviously this administration is coming in with some vigor. There's a pretty high speed, efficient process that's going on. Is this a little bit more worrisome to you this go around than it was back in 2016, just because of the speed at which things are moving? Like, are you a little bit more worried about what could happen with these decisions on public land and whether they're going to like weigh pros and cons and hear the voices of the people more, or do you think it's the same situation?
It's a really, really good question. And it's one that I've spent a lot of time thinking about and pondering myself. And I could see it going one of two ways. There's what I will call my optimistic perspective, which is that, there are plenty of people within this administration, at least around it, and some tightly involved, who have similar interests as we do. For example, someone just left a comment in here about Don Jr., a perfect example. Donald Trump Jr. is a hunter and an angler and someone who has been to a lot of these places that we're talking about, who's felt it and seen it firsthand. So I know that the son of our president, deep in his bones, knows how important these things are. And I understand he's got other things too he's worried about and other priorities as well. But I can't imagine that he can go to sleep at night and not dream about his experience hunting sheep in the Arctic or fishing for salmon or rainbow trout near Bristol Bay or whatever it is he's done. There's no way he had those experiences and did not also feel the same things I have felt deep in my soul that keep me up at night because of how powerful those places and these experiences are. So I have hope that there are people like him and others who will see two things. Number one, we'll see that there are a whole lot of people like us who love to hunt and fish, who love the natural world, who depend on these resources and places. And hopefully folks will recognize that a lot of those folks voted for the current administration and support them and are wishing them well in many ways. Part of what you would hope that would mean would be that they would also try to represent our interests in other ways too. And so if the voting base that put these guys in office is saying, hey, hello, we're your guys, we're your girls, we got you here, please pay attention to this thing, I have hope that that will have some sway. I have hope that there's an opportunity to raise awareness from the inside about the fact that, hey, I know you're hearing from some people that are showing you a lot of dollar signs and showing you ways that you can, maximize revenue here. And I know that sounds great. And I know, etc. But let's tap the brakes on some of this stuff. There's some segments, there's some things here that are really important for other reasons. Let's look at that perspective. So I hope that kind of message can get through. I think that there are connections to the administration, like the Secretary of the Interior. He is a hunter and angler. He is someone who has, experience in the natural world. He was the governor of North Dakota. He seems open and willing to work with folks with our interests. So that the Department of the Interior is the agency that manages our Bureau of Land Management, National Park Service, much of our public land system. So there's folks like that who I think we can have positive relationships with, and they're supportive of hunting, and all those things are really good. So I think that, if we rally as a community and kind of not be muzzled by the worry of like, I shouldn't say anything bad about my team. I think that happens sometimes when everyone's put into these teams and you feel like here's my thing that I think about. I am a huge Michigan State Spartan fan. Okay. Don't hate me for it, but I went to Michigan State University, huge Tom Izzo fan during college basketball season, etc. And so I support the Spartans all the time. And, anytime there's some crazy thing going on, I would find myself feeling like I had to be an apologist for it. Like they could do no wrong. And at one point I realized, gosh, this thing that this one player did was a really knuckleheaded move. He did or said something stupid or did something crazy. And then I caught myself wanting to defend it, even though I knew that if he was a University of Michigan player, I would have said, oh, look at that knucklehead. What an idiot. What a horrible representative. And I caught myself and realized, oh, wow, that's what happens with political parties all the time, right? If it's on your team, you kind of ignore it. And if it's on the other team, you say, oh, they're horrible.
If the ref calls a bad play, you're like, it worked out in my favor.
Yeah. So
but it worked out for me, Yeah.
So there's this risk that if you are a hunter and angler and you are appreciative of Republicans being pro-hunting and all that kind of stuff, that you might feel like you shouldn't speak up about these things because that's your team. I think that would be a huge mistake. So if that happens, then I don't think that our cause and that our interests will be represented internally, and that does worry me. But I have hope that we can reach people that understand what we're talking about here, and that maybe we can move the needle in some good ways. Now,
I'll add that the rallying of our voices, it has a demonstrable impact in the ability to reach congressmen and the chambers. And I happen to be very fortunate to work incredibly close on the hunters and anglers for the Brooks Range to stop the Ambler Road. We helped get signatures. I ran ad campaigns, and the targeting was fascinating because certain ads had to reach a greener granola bar audience, so to speak, the folks that went there to do, fishing for very unique species of fish that are in the Brooks Range. And other ads had to speak very much so to the hunters. Those are two very different audiences. If those ads cross lines, like we weren't getting those signatures. So it had to be a very tightly managed ad campaign, but we got enough signatures to stop the Ambler Road. And it was a foreign mining company that was trying to come in and dissect right down the middle of one of the literal most pristine places you could go on this effing planet. Like it is the middle of literally nowhere. The only way to get there is a flying. Like I hope someday I have enough money to go to this place because it looks incredible. And that foreign mining company then take whatever the minerals, the steel, and so forth that they'd get, and then sell it back to us. It's like, what are we doing? You're letting a foreign mining company come into the States in Alaska in this pristine area, blah, 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 whatever. You can go look it up. It's a lot of information about this particular project but now it's like you said, there's energy, there's certain people, and it's getting kicked back up again. It's like, man, I thought we killed this engine. Someone just found the keys and started it again. Like, holy shit, it's coming back. That was a lot of work. That was a lot of work to just get to that point. And I thought we were good, and we're not. Like someone chopped the snake's head off and it grew two more heads in its place. So our voices not only matter, but they have an actual demonstrable impact to the things we're trying to seek change in. And like these areas, again, Pandora's box, if that mine gets laid out, there's no going back. It will no longer be the most beautiful place you can go to on this planet to some degree. Like well, that one's off the list. Where else can we go? What's the second best place? Let's make sure that one doesn't get, its head lopped off like here in the States or wherever we need to go. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah.
To the question from Calder about Don Jr., he's not a politician, unfortunately. He might have sway with his pops. Hopefully, one would think, but I don't know how far that goes to the ballot box with some of these things. Like I don't know. And I think what he to your point, I really like the way you said that. Hopefully, those wild places he's been to have touched his soul and reached his bone marrow. But he hunts in a way that I could only dream of. Like he's not. I don't know that he's ever hunted public land, and I'm saying I literally don't know if he has or not. But I would imagine with pockets that deep, he's doing things that I could only dream of, and certainly not afford. So I would put him in a slightly different camp as the rest of us that listen to this particular show. Anyways, I don't know anyone else that has Don Jr. money that can go hunt places Don
Not many
Jr.
people do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there is. You can either come into this cynically or you can come into it optimistically, and I'm trying to view the possible potential good rather than assume the worst. And so the way I think I'm trying to approach this is I would hope that we can find allies within the current administration and help them see like, hey, the folks that are telling you about this stuff, they're kind of off base on this. I'm hoping we can reach folks like Don Jr. and others like the Secretary of the Interior and make the case on this stuff because there is precedent where, folks like who we have in power right now have moved the needle in a good way on some of these things we care about. Like, for example, Pebble Mine. So to make a very long story short,
That's a very long story.
Make a very long story a little bit short. Another mine proposed again in the incredible pristine landscape of Alaska, but this is the largest, basically the greatest producing region of salmon in the entire world. The largest runs of sockeye salmon in the world are here in Bristol Bay, Alaska. And there was a mine proposed right in the headwaters of these rivers that all dump into the bay and support this unbelievable millions and millions and millions strong salmon population that recreational anglers, that commercial anglers, that native villages, and so many other people all depend on. And for almost 20 years or somewhere around 20 years, folks are going back and forth and trying to stop this thing or trying to push it through. And some of the folks working on this, Trout Unlimited, and some other people in there, Alaska, were able to get Don Jr. to come out and go fishing with them there around Bristol Bay. Actually, very near a place that I went fishing this past year and where I learned about a lot of these things myself. And I think that had some influence because Don Jr. came back from that trip, tweeted his support for stopping the Pebble Mine and saying, like, hey, this thing is actually not the right place. We shouldn't do this one. And not too long after, the president did the same thing. So that was a place where, hey, like usually they're gung-ho on everything extraction, but on that one, they said, nope, not this one. And that was, I think, one, because Don Jr. had a real experience there, meeting with real people who made the case. And then number two, a wide swath of different interests across commercial fishing, recreational fishing, tribal communities, public land users, the traditional environmental community, all of those voices for many years continued to talk about it, continued to raise awareness about it, continued to talk to whatever administration was in power, whatever party had the majority in the Senate. They were just hammering the message year after year after year, and eventually they were able to make something happen. And so I think that gives us precedent, and that gives us a model to look on as we tackle the next round. Now, all that said, that is my optimistic, hopeful outcome. I'm hoping for those things. It's all possible if we do our.
So I think that's a little bit more than optimistic. That's like reasonably optimistic.
Yeah. And it's dependent on us doing our job, which is hunters and anglers and other people that care about these things. We have to rally around this stuff, put attention on it, make the case, make sure the case is heard. And then there's then the onus is also put on the folks, put on the Trump administration, put on the Secretary of the Interior, put on our congressmen and women to prioritize what is one of the most incredible inheritances ever here in America that we have shared public lands and natural resources that we get to enjoy. We don't have to be billionaires to go to these places, right? I understand there are some billionaires who get to enjoy them too, but I'm very far from that. And there aren't many other people in the world who have 640 million acres that they can own that doesn't have that kind of money, but we do here in America. So, you know, we need to make sure that, you know, our representatives in government are understanding just how important that is to us. So that's the optimistic side. Now, the cynical side, the downside, and the reason why it's so important that we pay attention to this, despite all the other noise, and the reason why I've been trying to elevate this again, is that if we don't do this, if we don't start making some noise about it, if we don't showcase to the administration, like, hey, this should be a priority, this should be a priority, if we don't, there are other people with other interests who do have a lot of influence and can make a lot of noise and have a ton of money, who have very, very different priorities than we do. And, you know, I hate to put, I don't like putting political labels on things because this turns people off. But the fact of the matter is that on this specific set of issues, the Republican Party is much more interested in prioritizing development of this stuff and pushing through these projects that we've talked about, right? The folks who want to sell off the public lands of America, the folks that want to transfer them, they're Republicans. I'm not saying all Republicans are like that, of course, but the sub segment that does want to do these things, those are Republicans. So we have a Republican president, we have a Senate majority that's Republican, and we have a Republican majority in the House. So that means that if these folks who want those things can get in the ears of the folks in power right now, with the trifecta of power, they hypothetically could make this stuff happen. With an administration that has a mandate, like they were voted in with a mandate to make the government more efficient, to do all of these things, which requires revenue. I understand all that kind of stuff. There's going to be a lot of people saying, hey, you can make a lot of money by just squeezing every ounce, every single dollar out of these public lands. Drill, baby, drill. Mine, cut, sell off, give it away, whatever the thing is. Like, there will be people pushing that message. And if they get through, if they have the influence, then stuff could get done really quickly in that regard. So that's the risk. If we don't do our job, and if, you know, the folks that were elected to represent us, if they don't represent those interests that we hopefully can make sure people hear, then we could, you know, these things are seriously at risk. So that's why I think it's so important, and why we as hunters and anglers need to perk up again and start paying attention, because we have both an opportunity and a real threat depending on how things go.
Well, I think your platform is unique in the sense that, I mean, social media is designed around echo chambers, unfortunately. And I have a big problem with that, algorithmically speaking, since a lot of these companies are out of Silicon Valley. And most of those people would prefer to see hunting go away. So there's that battle to fight on one end of the spectrum politically, which is a problem. But those echo chambers are hard to, why I like this topic and why I wanted you on the show for this particular topic, and what I like that you're doing is most channels, profiles, pages, personalities, so forth, are skewed so heavily around people hearing the things that validate them and their identity, things they care about. And then it just algorithmically, it feeds you those feedback loops of things that you like to see and hear that are aligned with your viewpoint of the world. That keeps you on the platform. It shows that you're among like-minded people. There's a sense of belonging. There's all that stuff. So if someone comes in and says something that is different, even though it could be a level-headed thing to say, you get verbally curb stomped in the comment section. Yeah. And it's like, well, hold on. I'm not coming at it from this angle. I'm curious, or I want to learn more. And could someone point me in the right direction? And it's vicious out there right now. And your channel or your page, the Wired to Hunt page, Mark Kenyon's page, I think because of the book and where you stand on these things in the middle ground, you navigate it in such a great way that those conversations and dialogues can exist on your channel in a much more civil way. And I think you're gonna get your outliers. That's gonna be really hard to avoid, but by and large, it's pretty civil insofar as the response that I see. And that makes me feel comfortable to then go and put my voice in there and start to have that conversation and raise awareness and so forth. In other places, not so much. because I don't know what I don't know. I'm trying to learn more. That's a big point of this particular conversation is I'm not super like I have a lot going on in my life. Like I mostly could give a shit about politics. Like I'd rather focus my energy on things that I can't control, and I can control very little of that. So if I put my attention to these arguments online, I'm detracting from my responsibilities as a dad or a business owner or as an employee and so forth. So it's good to see that we can get some good information and good dialogue. Go ahead, Derek. I see
Well,
you.
it's what you just said to the, what can the average person do to try to help this issue that Mark's just illustrated? And I think all I'm thinking about when I hear Mark talk and on both sides of it is everything just comes down to your personal connection, right? Like we have a personal connection with these spaces. They're important to us. We've had experiences. That's why we hold them so dear
Mhm.
because we have that. If you're someone who's making the decisions on what happens to these places, but you've never set foot there, you have no personal connection, it's a lot easier to say, well, yeah, let's reap the benefits of the money because
Yeah.
that's what their connection is, right? That's what these people do. That they're businessmen. Like
Except
they're good at it.
government
That's their
isn't
personal connection.
business.
But it's an
government.
opportunity for them to
Yeah.
do what they know, which is the same for us. So I think what the average person can do is share your experiences, share them with obviously like this is a good platform, like people hearing that. But the more and more people, especially people in leadership roles, congressmen and women, the more they hear personal connection, especially if they don't have that, that's got to somehow build a little bit of momentum because that's all we got. That's all we got.
That's why certain organizations are important, and there might be disdain towards some or feelings towards some rather than others. The reason some of the lobbyist organizations exist is because they have a very large stick with all of their members. And they can take all those voices and to one endpoint that's lobbying in DC and say,
Mhm.
this is what X amount of thousands of people have to say. So our voices can be heard maybe a little more clearer and directly through various organizations. Also individually, but I don't know if you have opinions about that, Mark, insofar as like what organizations are good at lobbying. Like, I don't know, Safari Club International is huge. They have more lawyers on staff than all of the other RMEF, BHA. So you could lasso all those other ones together, and SCI has more attorneys on staff than all of the other ones combined. They represent share voice for us in issues that are really near and dear to our heart around some of these, depending on what the policies are, and they lobby and they're in DC all the time. Now, is that a good organization to be paired with for these issues, or like what are the other? I'm just using that one as a general example because I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. It's with some of the belief systems here. Again, that might be a good selling point of like you should join this. You should join all the organizations. Maybe I should join Ducks Unlimited and NWTF and I should join all of them probably. As a hunter and angler, and I'm a part of some. I think I get stuff in the mail all the time. I've written checks. I don't know. It's just on like auto deduct or whatever. I always get like a knife.
I think you're right, though. I think that they're joining as many of these organizations as you possibly can because they all need help, they all need funding, and they all want to make sure you're hearing about the things that are important to you. I would say that one of the great values that these various conservation organizations provide is acting as a filter, because as we've all talked about, we've all got a lot going on in our lives, and there's so much going on in the world right now. There's so much filling our social media feeds and whatever news site you follow, and YouTube, whatever, however you get your information, there's a ton of it. And it's very easy to get lost in the noise of it all. And especially this kind of stuff, if you're not really tapped into it, as you alluded to, Eric, like you might not know any of this stuff is going on. And so I think by joining organizations or at least signing up for their newsletters, at least for the organizations that represent the things that you care the most about, just a simple, very important value there is getting this carefully selected stream of information about like when very important things are happening, or if there's some kind of action needed to be taken, they will let you know. And so, when it comes to public land issues, some of the organizations that have been the most active on this specific set, I would say would be the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership and Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. There's plenty of other organizations that have done stuff on that front too, but I would say those two have been, at least within the hunting and fishing world, have been probably the most vocal and as directly focused as anyone. The TRCP has a really unique model in that they're not like a membership-based organization like RMEF or NWTF or anything like that. They have a partnership model. So basically, they act as this organization in DC that makes sure that when there's an issue impacting hunters and anglers, that as many of the different organizations are all singing the same tune at the right time. So in this case, let's say, this lawsuit from Utah demanding 18.5 million acres of land. Let's say that moved forward somehow, and all of a sudden we were worried about, this whole land transfer thing actually really, really, really going to happen. They might then say, all right, guys, this thing has reached this point. They're going to do two things. They're number one, going to email out to every single hunter and angler in their database, sounding the alarm on it. Like, hey, this is code red. Call your senators, call your representatives, etc. But then they also have deep relationships built in two places. They have deep relationships built within the government structure. So the job of TRCP is to build relationships with whoever's in office, in the Senate, in the executive branch, in the House. So they have relationships deep within those places. So they can call someone up in the Department of the Interior and say, hey, we've got to talk about this. And the reason why the Department of the Interior will take their phone calls is because the TRCP also has deep relationships with all of the conservation organizations. So they don't just say, hey, we're the TRCP, we want you to listen to us. They say, hey, we're the TRCP. We're the guys who just got 20,000 hunters and anglers to email and call you. And here with me, I've got the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Ducks Unlimited, Pheasants Forever, National Deer Association, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, Trout Unlimited, yada, 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 yada. So what they do is they bring all of the organizations together underneath the same umbrella in specific instances and gets them all there at the table together. So they're really, doing an important job
They're
with it.
very effective.
Yes.
And they're very hardworking.
Yeah. So great folks there at the TRCP, really believe in what they're doing, have been involved with a lot of stuff there, and excited about the impact they could have on these things we're talking about. And then BHA, that's the grassroots kind of organization, just getting members fired up, aware of what's going on, rallying the troops, getting people engaged in this kind of stuff. So both of those guys also send out, I think it's weekly newsletters that will keep you posted on these specific issues, keep you aware of the kinds of things I've been bringing up, and then also point out ways to take action. And so that kind of goes back to what you guys are talking about, how, Eric, you said with the hunters and anglers for the Brooks Range, like we made a true tangible difference there. Something like 14,000 emails or calls made regarding the Ambler Road this past year. There is precedent for our voices making a difference. That example being one, or back in like 2019, 2020, when the Great American Outdoors Act was passed, that was another one that, wouldn't just have happened if we as a hunting and fishing community, as well as the Crunchy Green crowd, everyone got together and said, hey, this whole public lands thing, the transfer movement, not gonna slide. We as a outdoor community made it political poison to support the transfer or sale of public lands. And that got that whole thing pushed aside. That got the Great American Outdoors Act passed, which was something that became what that was for folks that don't know. It was a bill that provided permanent funding for something called the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which takes dollars from the offshore drilling that happens in America and diverts some of that to this fund. Well, those funds then have to be appropriated to it every year. This bill, when it got passed, makes that permanent, is permanently funded. This is now a fund that we can use for public land acquisition, maintenance, and various projects. Very, very important. It's helped us get a lot of our public access sites we have, public areas. And then it also addressed, I think, $80 billion of maintenance that had not been taken care of on our national park sites that had been backlogged. This finally got funding to take care of that. So that happened in 2020. I think it got signed into law with the Trump administration signing that dotted line. And it happened because hunters and anglers were wearing our public land t-shirts. We were tweeting up a storm. We were making a hullabaloo online, and then actually calling senators, emailing representatives, signing petitions, doing all this stuff, rallying at the Capitol. So all that work led to a great outcome. We've got people trying to push the same old message again this time around. we're going to have to do the same old thing again ourselves. And so if you'll allow me, I'll mention kind of 3 specific things they can do if I'm not rambling too
Please.
much.
Yeah, absolutely.
So number 1, first thing is just get tapped in, like I mentioned. Sign up for the newsletters from TRCP or BHA or whichever organization of choice is best aligned with you. Make sure you're tapped in there so you're getting these alerts, so you're being made aware of all this stuff. And then when the action alerts come out, you just make the time to do it. I know we're busy. I know we've got a lot of stuff going on, but taking 5 minutes or even 2 minutes sometimes to, send the email or place the phone call, it really matters and makes a difference. Now, there's the form letters that all these guys send out that are as simple as just putting in your name and address, and then it auto-populates all the information for your senators and your representative and sends it right off. Or it will submit the comment to whatever department, whatever the specific issue is. It takes care of all of it for you. So that's good. At a minimum, do that. But what I have learned when talking to folks that have dealt with us from the other side, the folks that are receiving these, is that those form letters, the generic ones that everybody sends, those all kind of get put into one bucket. And they certainly help. But if you get 10,000 of those and they're all the exact same, it might only kind of count like 100. But if you get a custom letter, or maybe even just like write the first paragraph or 2 with your own words, sharing your own experiences, like why this thing matters to you, how you and your son went and shed hunted for moose antlers or went fishing in the Boundary Waters and had this incredible experience, and how much it's benefited your life and your business or whatever it is. Having something in there that's unique to you brings you to the top of the pile, and it's worth like 10x of those form letters. And then finally, a phone call. If a congressman's office gets 10 phone calls about the same issue, that's like a red flag. Like, holy smokes, what's going on? People are actually calling us about this.
Mhm.
That is really high up there. So what I'm trying to do now is, kind of suck it up and recognize, this is a little bit inconvenient, but I'm trying to get better now at actually calling my representative, at calling my senators. And, I think the first time I did, I was a little nervous about it, intimidated by the idea, like, oh gosh, I'm going to call this office and they're going to give me a hard time, or they're going to argue whatever I have to say, or they're going to make me sound stupid. Turns out that's not the case. There's just some poor intern that's stuck there on the other side that has to listen to everything you say.
I'm totally gonna chime in with you there, Mark,
Just like
because I've done it. I did
Yeah.
my lunch hour. Was it back in 2016, 2017? I did the letter thing, because BHA was a pretty big watchdog for all that stuff. Like, they would bring it to your attention via an email, via text message, whatever. All right, I guess I'm going to call this person. I had no idea what to expect, but like you said, it's some poor bastard intern that's got to sit there and listen to you drone on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and out of the 3 senators that I contacted, or congresspeople, or whoever, I duly elected official, 2 of them sent letters saying yes, they were going to do the right thing, and 1 said an absolutely no, we don't do that. And the 1 I got no answer from, and the 2, they had their intern answer the phone, and they actually did something. 1 was a blue representative, 1 was a red representative. The other was a red representative and wanted nothing to do with helping the little guy. It's just the way it is. So you bring the red and the blue together, you make them paint purple together, and that's what you got to do,
Paint by
man.
numbers, bitches.
Well, no, we gotta paint purple on something like this.
Yeah.
We gotta learn how to paint purple.
Well, that went better for you than it did for me. I had a local issue. And I went right to the mayor of our local town and sat down in his office right across from him, and I got into a heated argument with him. And I think I might have called him, like, I didn't come out right and say he was stupid, but in some roundabout way, that was the read between the lines. It was like not great, and he won anyways. So, but I tried. My voice he heard me, and he did. And I was like, wow, I can't believe he actually sat down with me. So you'd be surprised you can get through to people. I mean, that's a very local level. It's probably not the same thing at all, but yeah, if it was an intern that I was talking to, I'd probably be okay. I'll just tell you what I have to say, and I won't take it out on you.
Doing something is better than doing nothing.
Correct.
Yep.
It is. And you got to remember that for most of these folks in these roles, the most important thing is really they want to get reelected. They want to get votes. They want to keep a job, right? And if enough people are actually calling them, which they recognize requires energy and some balls and
Public
some
opinion.
inconvenience.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they hear from enough folks, they will feel some real insecurity about their future job prospects.
Definitely.
That's the power we have.
Yeah.
Even for people who don't care about our issue, who have different priorities, we can sometimes make them care if we do our job well enough.
We've all had enough problems in our life where like, damn it, I actually have to deal with this. You know, like there's
Yeah.
that. I think that's kind of the tipping point you want to get to.
That's-
Now I got to deal with this.
Well, and
I got to pay attention.
this is the little bit of power we do have as common folk, as we can hold our duly elected officials accountable.
Yeah.
This is our way of holding them accountable. You know,
Yep.
you voted this person in, now hold them accountable. Ask them to do something for you. You did something for them. You did them a
Yeah.
solid by getting them in there.
Yep.
Now it's your turn to help us
Mhm.
out.
Yeah.
good.
Absolutely.
This is quite the topic to navigate. You've done an excellent job, Mark.
Such an important one.
Thanks, guys.
Extremely.
I
Where do you find the time, man?
I don't sleep a whole lot.
I hear you in that one. But you've definitely dedicated a lot of time and energy towards understanding this. And I think that's really helpful to bring to the listeners, like the folks that might not have had the time to dive in. There's a lot happening. So it's actually really hard to even fully pay attention, even if you wanted to. I don't even know where you'd start at this point, to focus on some things. And having that middle ground, that middle voice, and knowing that there are people that aren't 1% of the news is bad. And that's 1%, or not, sorry, I shouldn't say that. Of all of the news, most of what gets reported on is like the 1% of things happening in the world, but that 1%
Yeah.
accounts for 99% of what you actually see and hear. I think that same holds true for what we're seeing on social and the comment sections and so forth. And I'll add one other layer to that as someone who creates content on social media. Here's a fun fact. 1% of all people on social media are creators putting out content. I think it's 2 to 3% are engagers. They'll like or comment on things. The rest, the 96% of people on social media are lurkers. They're passive.
Wow.
They don't engage. They don't heart. They don't comment. I had a buddy screenshot me today a picture of a post that I posted of the bear bow and said, "Do you like that thing?" No heart, no comment. Not even. I know he's got a profile. He doesn't use it. Screenshot sends me a text message to talk to me about it. I'm like, so there's people that see these things and do not engage. So what you're seeing is, again, you're seeing 1% of the people that have the literal loudest voices. And so the 96% of people that are just sitting there are the guys like us that don't even know what the hell to say. Cause I'm like, I'm not going to deal with this. I don't even know how to like enter this. I don't know how to get on the on-ramp of this freeway without getting like, rammed into by a dump truck after 4 seconds of merging. And then I get kicked off the bridge and my car rolls over and starts on fire. Like it'd be, I'm just not even going to bother. I'm just going to sit here at the stoplight and watch all this traffic go by going, holy shit, that's a lot of traffic. My analogy for the day, I guess. So, again, you've carved out that lane for us to merge onto, I think, and not get rammed off the road. Car ramrod. I wrote on the paper. You didn't say it. Right. Thank you very much for that. It's really respected, and it's hard to do. So it's really respected for that reason, because I don't know a lot of other folks doing that right now.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. And these places and the wildlife out there and the opportunities we have to do what we do, man, it's made it is my life. It's made all the best things in my life possible, the best things that my family and I get to enjoy. It's related to those things. So I feel a deep obligation to try to make sure that it's around for the long term. And we all can be a part of that.
I think that's what's so beautiful about this topic in general is that, I mean, as mentioned before, it's the middle of the road in a time where it's so hard to connect to people or people on the other side. I think everyone can agree that this is a good thing, something that all can enjoy, and then that can bridge the gap in this time of polarized political views of like, hey, let's get on the same page. Like, we all want to enjoy this together. Like, there's our common bond. Talk about it with people. Talk about it with your friends. Keep people interested and on the right track so they can merge into the lane that Mark has given us.
And I'll add a final point that I think, and I use social media as the main, hub of where a lot of these dialogues are happening. It's like road rage. You don't realize there's another human in the car. You're just pissed that they didn't do what you needed them to do. I don't know I'm going all these traffic analogies, but they seem like
Do
they
you
could
have any
work here.
episodes today? Or
Yeah, was there a road rage thing?
I
you
really
got?
I might
Yeah, check
There,
your
I feel
bumper.
there was a story behind
There's no,
this.
there's but you will like, oh, you a-hole, and you're all mad. But then, like, if you got out of don't get out of the car. But if you did, like, you'd realize that person like might have a baby on board and they're trying to get to the doctor because their child's having an asthma attack. Like that maybe has happened. That probably happened to me.
That's happening.
So there's human beings on the other side of the keyboard, and if we ran into them at the trailhead, we wouldn't say half of these things to them. These people are not some group of people on either end of the spectrum. I'm talking to both sides of the fence here. There's not like an island of them that are just plotting and scheming. They're our neighbors. They're the guy you see at the YMCA or the gal you see at the YMCA trying to get their kids out of the minivan to go get a work on and drop their kids off at daycare. They're right next to us. They're putting their pants on the same way you are. They're going to their jobs. Their jobs just look a little bit different. Like it's not we're just trying to exist, man. And hopefully we're trying to get out to the public lands to do shed hunting, fishing, hunting, squirrel hunting, turkey hunting is right around the corner. A lot of
Hiking.
us do these things and love it. And that's the common ground. And I think if we hold steady on that like point, we can maybe be a little bit less road ragey behind the keyboard and think for a second, like they're pretty passionate about this. They must care about that. But they think about it this way. I think about it this way. That's not bad. And I've talked about this before where our differences are actually a good thing. And I think I maybe wrote an article about that not that long ago about our differences actually being a positive. And I liken that to the hunting community stuff of the bashing and all that jazz that we stand for. But I think there's similarities here with the other things that we're talking about. Mark, thank you very much, man, for being on the show. This is a special one to me, I think.
Yeah. Hey, you are welcome. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this stuff, and hopefully we can all do some good work together and keep these places and wildlife and opportunities around for a long time.
You bet.
You bet, man. Awesome. Well, with that, I'll end the episode. If you guys have comments on this one, toss them in. We can see them on Spotify. We can see them on YouTube. We can see them on. Well, I think that's about it. But toss them in, and like to hear your opinion on this. We got some good guests lined up for the upcoming weeks. We'll be at a trade show on the last weekend of March, the open season sportsman's show in the Wisconsin Dells at the Kalahari. Greg and I will be there. Tyler, Matt Strime, a bunch of other friends will probably be lingering and hanging out at the booth, chugging Busch lattes with us. So if you're in the Midwest and you want to make a trek up, like we'd love to see you at the booth and do a cheers with you. But thanks for tuning in, folks. Have a great evening. That's it.